Hello and welcome to Mosaic with TJ Randolph. I am TJ Randolph. Thanks for stopping by. Listen, if you can see behind me, the uh, the setup is a little bit different because I am on location. Yes, I've been on location in North Carolina visiting my mom for her birthday, and what a week it has been. What a week it has been. Let me ask you right real quickly if you would go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel. Also, if you like the content, please share the content. Okay, let's get right into it. Again, like I said, this has been a week, a rejuvenating week for so many different reasons, and culminating in me, my mom, and my aunt slash cousin going to see The Woman King. But before we get into that, I want to talk about what strength means and what it has meant this week. I have literally sat at my mother's feet, figuratively speaking, I guess, and to glean so much from her life lived experiences, learned so much about my family, the men and the women in my family, looked at pictures, looked at, heirlooms passed down from generation to generation, reminiscing and thinking about the patriarch of my family, my grandfather, and the lessons that he has passed down to his daughter, who ultimately passed him down to me. And in so doing, this week has reminded me of my lineage, and has rejuvenated me to appreciate and value where I come from and who helped me become the woman that I am, flaws and all. So I'm going to share some things with you. Because I've struggled in the past couple of weeks, and I wasn't really quite sure why, but there's a lot of angst that's going on in this social media, particularly YouTube, as it relates to men and women. And it's almost as if I thought or felt as if somehow there was some shame in being the strong person that I had become. And I am reminded, this week has reminded me, there's no shame in that. There's no shame in that. And I don't need to downplay it. I don't need to downplay it. And neither should you. I was reminded, listening to various stories, good and bad, of family, friends, reminded that the dynamic between men and women, or the challenges between men and women, are far-reaching and go way back. And inasmuch as there are those who talk about the color purpling of our community, the last week or so has let me know that there was a reason for that. And I know that there's some people that don't want to acknowledge it, but those things happened. Those things happened. Those things happened, and from what I've learned, that yes, families stayed together. Some stayed together because they wanted to. Some stayed together because they had no choice. Some women stayed with high school sweethearts because they loved them and they built families together, but some stayed having a smile on the outside but being beat on a daily basis. And those are just anecdotal experiences that I am aware of. So if we think about that, and I'm just one person, those things happened. And those things that happened produced, the impact of those things affected how other young women were raised. It does. Now, I'm not here to make excuses for it. I'm not here to debate anybody. I really don't care. But no longer will I sit by and allow some untruths to be told. It does not mean that along the way, women took on a masculine roles and took it overboard to the extreme. It does. I'm not making excuses for that either. But what this week has shown me, many of us didn't choose to do that just because. Many of us, like my grandfather, were told, men told their daughters and granddaughters, you do not have to settle for being mistreated. You do not have to settle for being beat on. You do not have to settle for not being able to have a voice. You don't have to settle for that. Now, I've already said the challenge was to know how to temper that, how to have a voice, but also fulfill the role of a wife, mother, matriarch, honoring your husband if you were so positioned to have one. But I can no longer deny and be ashamed or embarrassed of the strength and fortitude that enabled me to create a life for myself and my daughter. And the ultimate litmus test would be if, with the mistakes that I made, will the next generation be better? And in my case, the answer is yes. Because the truth of the matter is, we can know, I'll put it like this. There are some traditional values that need to remain and we need to bring back. But we live in a modern society. And more often than not, it's going to take two incomes. It's going to take that. And in some instances, depending on the line of work, the wife might make more. But it's not the money that makes that's the issue. It's the attitude with the making of the money. And that we need to make sure our daughters know that some of the opportunities is just based on that, opportunities that may be afforded to them versus what is afforded to men, but we still are together in this thing. And we women are no better than our men. So that's that part. So now I want to talk a little bit about the woman king. Now, y'all already know that I've said that I had a problem with the title because, again, that in and of itself is very provocative because women are queens, not kings. Okay? But I decided to see the movie anyway. Despite the protests, despite, the scathing comments, I decided to see the movie anyway, and I am so glad I did for so many reasons, and we're going to talk about them. So let me bring up some stuff. Let me bring up share some pictures with you. Okay? Hold on a minute. Woman King. A lot of people are having a problem with this movie. So let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is that the Dahomey tribe was known for being an integral part in the Atlantic slave trade. It is also known as come to light that not only playing an integral role, the fighting, these warriors were among some of the most savage, some of the most unrelenting. And the frustration of many is that this story does not speak factual or historically factual to what we know to be true about the Dahomey tribe. And these women, the Agoge, the regiment of women warriors, the Agoge, were vicious. So let's talk about slavery for a moment, shall we? Slavery goes back to the Bible. For those who are religious scholars, or those who are just historicals, who are studies and lovers of history, slavery goes back to the Bible. As it relates to Africa, I am not a historian, but what I do know is that slaves were captured and put into servitude as a spoil of war. And this tribe is no different. What becomes different is that when we talk about the Atlantic slave trade, yes, the Dahomey traded slaves for weapons, alcohol, all those other things that the Europeans were offering. But I contend that when these slaves were sold for lack of, were sold or traded, if you will, it was not the intent of the Dahomey that these people were being sold into chattel slavery. It was never intended to be generational slavery like chattel slavery became. That you were born into it and that you remained property. It does not mean that it was right. It does not mean that it should be glorified. The truth of the matter is, Black people have always known that in some shape, form, or fashion, that Africans sold other Africans into slavery. We know this. So the outrage about this movie is not glorifying it, in my opinion. And I will say, since when did we look to Hollywood to teach us history? Since when did we do that? I'm waiting. And when should we do that? There are aspects of the story that are factual. No different than, hold on a minute, no different than this movie here, 300. Can we also talk about Gladiator that has aspects of history in it? Okay? The 300, aspect of history. But because this is not spot on as it relates to how the Dahomey, the sacrifice, human sacrifices, the beheading. Okay, look, it happened. Everybody, every race or of people has aspects of history that are shameful, that are embarrassing. And this is ours. This is ours. The truth of the matter is, and it's sad, many of us didn't even research to know, and we never do. Until somebody posts something, but let me see. Because many of us, myself included, are not historical scholars. But see, here's the thing. I looked at it as entertainment. That has aspects of history which prompted me to do further research, like 300, like Gladiator. So, Why did the movie resonate with me? Whether or not it was entirely factual, it resonated with me because one, I'm a woman. Two, I'm a black woman. Three, I was a soldier. I was a soldier. And I, I related to many of these women because, in accordance with the byline, these women were chosen to be a part of the king's guard. They were considered wayward or unruly women. So basically, you couldn't do nothing with them. So you were sent to the king's guard. But you had to train vigorously. Train hard, fight harder. That resonated with me because even before I became a commissioned officer, enlisting in the Army, I was forced to push myself in ways I never thought I could. I saw myself in that movie in the training scenes. I saw myself in that. These women had a choice. Again, this is the movie line. I don't know if it is factual in history, but in this movie, the women had a choice whether or not to stay or go. And for those who chose to stay, they were giving up the opportunity to be wives, to be mothers. And for some, it was better to give that up than to be a wife of a man who could beat them at will. I'm okay with that. There were, in this movie, these women chose to have a career, if you will, at the expense of knowing what it would be to marry, at the expense of knowing what it would be to love and be loved and to have children. It resonated with me because as a single mother, there were certain sacrifices that I had to make in my military career. And in so doing, I sacrificed the same thing. Yeah, I had my daughter, but I sacrificed my marriage to her father. I don't know if it would have worked or not, but that is part of the sacrifice that I made and that my daughter paid for in ways. These women of this movie did an extraordinary job. I was filled with pride on the strength of the excellence in the production. Excellent. This movie did for me the same thing that G.I. Jane did for me, and that was completely fiction. But that woman in the movie, G.I. Jane in that movie, and these women in this movie reminded me of what I had to do to push myself to be excellent in the military, to be excellent in the federal civil service, to be excellent in my career pursuits. This movie reminded me there were times I had to kill my tears. I had to kill my tears just like Viola Davis did when she was overcome with emotion, that she had to get away so the others would not see her tears because she was the general. I identify with that. I identify with that because sometimes as a mother, I had to kill my tears so my daughter would not see how certain things affected me because she needed me to be strong for her. As an Army leader, there were times I had to face my fears of, heights, to do things that I was afraid to do, that I was panicked to do, but I killed the tears because others were depending on me. There was a time I remember going through the obstacle course, just like in this movie, hurt, scared, dirty, but fighting through to get it, to get the time, pursuing excellence. I was reminded of that, and it brought me pride. It did. It did. Not in win. I wasn't first. However, in ROTC, I went through the grenade obstacle course, and I did come in first there. I beat, of the whole camp, I had the fastest time of the female soldiers, the fastest time in the grenade obstacle course. Excellence, I say. The movie resonated with me because as many of us may want to be married, all of us will not be. There are some who don't desire to be married. There are some who willingly, like these women, gave up that. But there are some who want it and still won't have it. So what does that mean? That means that your sisters will have to be around you to support you. That's what that means. That means that you'll have to draw strength from each other because you will not have a husband. And even if you do have a husband, if he passes before you, you're still going to need your sisters. And that's not anything to be ashamed of. And again, I had to be reminded of that because if you sit long enough in these spaces, it'll make you feel like you should be ashamed of that if that is your journey. One of my best friends who passed away a couple of years ago, she wasn't married. She had a son who was grown. But in the end, we were there for her. Her sisters, her mother, her son. So no, she didn't die alone. Her sisters, her mother was there when she took her last breath. Because everyone's not going to get married. And even if she had been married, if her husband passed away, she would still need her sisters just like in this movie. Just like in this movie. I've seen women be as resolute in my life as these women were in this movie. Relying on one another. My sister soldiers relying on me on them. Going back to the sacrifice, the killing of the tears. As a commissioned officer, I was the only one in my class of 30 plus, only female in my class of 30 plus that had a child. There were about maybe a total of 10 women, myself included, and maybe about 20 so men. Now, several men in the class had children, but they were married and their children were at home with their wives. Well, me, I was the only woman of my female counterparts that had a child. And every time I would call home to see about my daughter so I could talk to her. She said, "Mommy, when are you coming to get me?" It broke me up. But I had to kill my tears when I went to the classroom. I had to kill my tears when I'm out in the field. I had to kill my tears when I'm leading a maneuver or leading something, because I was pursuing excellence. I could not afford to let my tears, my longing for my child, deter me for the mission. Same thing with these ladies. We're not talking about whether the mission was right or wrong, because let's keep game here. How many missions have we as a United States gone into that soldiers have wondered, why are we going? That may or may not have agreed, but they were following orders. Let's hear about it, shall we? Don't play with me. Let's talk about, the tribes, the Native American tribes. Same thing. Slaves were the spoils of war. Does it make it right? No, but was it the culture of the time? Yes, it was. Was it the tradition of the time? Yes, it was. The tribute that they would pay to the king of the tribes that they conquered, the heads. Is it something that we can identify with today? Absolutely not. But let's be real here. Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. Because today, this very day, more of us are killing each other than white people. Just like this. Just like the Dahomey. Don't start with me. Don't. The movie was excellent. The movie was excellent because it reminded me, yeah, Terry, you are a warrior. Have been. And there's nothing wrong with it. Thankfully, though, I'm now in position of being led. And for those women who desire that, that's what you must do as well. But my husband, he loves his warrior because he knows I get things done when it needs to be done. He knows I know how to get things done when they need to be done. He knows that family is important to me. And a man that is truly about community wants a woman who can do those things. No, not to usurp his authority. Let's talk about that for a minute. Nanuska was the general. She was an advisor to the king. This was a female regiment. Female regiment. Just like they had female Army Corps. Same thing. Doesn't mean that the men didn't fight. It doesn't mean that the men were not leaders in their own right. It just means that this particular aspect of the Dahomey were women. Just like in the United States military, you had the Army Air Corps, the female Army Air Corps. It doesn't mean, this movie does not show the men sitting back in subservient roles. The movie was about the women, though. Okay? It's about the women. Don't show the women in this movie, telling men to do this, that, and the other. No, this was about the women, the Agoge. And she was an advisor to the king. See, some of y'all don't know what that means, because y'all have never advised anybody. But see, I know what that means. And I know what an honor that is. I know what the honor that she took, that she saw. Again, this is a movie, but see, I identify with it because it has aspects of life that I can identify, I can relate to, because this king respected her, that she had his ear. I have had the ears of leadership. I have had the ears that I could knock on a door to a general, to an admiral, and they asked my advice. They asked my insight. They made the decision, but they respected my expertise enough to consider me an advisor to them. That is huge. That is major. Men and male and female leaders. See, y'all don't know nothing about that. Y'all don't know nothing about that because y'all ain't advised nobody. Tremendous honor. Any king, CEO, emperor, whatsoever has trusted advisors that they lean on, that they seek counsel. And just like in this, if she was prepared for the consequences for the choices that she made in contradiction to the king's or the commander's intent, no different. I identify with this movie. And to me, going to see this movie with my mother was the icing on the cake of a week that has been filled with learning, relearning, reminiscing, valuing the experiences my mother has had in her life, the experiences of my family, my ancestors, women who were sharecroppers, pictures that I've seen, women are sharecroppers, standing behind these humongous animals, tending to the fields, the strength that they had. And the beauty of it is I have family members that are old enough and still within their right mind to remember those things. See, for some of you, those things are just what you read about in books. But I still have the privilege of talking to people who were still here to remember it. That's that G.I. Jane. That was like I said, one of my favorite movies. Still is to this day. Why? It forced me to push myself. Shoot, even watching the Woman King, push myself again. Think it Viola Davis, 54, 55. That's my age. She got ripped for this video, for this movie. Inspiration. So I personally don't give a damn what you think. I encourage you to see the movie, though. There's some other things I want to show you. Again, it's serendipitous that I am here visiting my mom for a time such as this. It's serendipitous because, again, artifacts in my mom's house, paying homage to our African ancestry. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's a book. There's another one. Again, I have to find it because here it is. Here it is. These African warriors, these women warriors, again, being here with my mom was the icing on the cake. to go see the movie with my mom was the icing on the cake. Having been here in her home, surrounded by African culture, hearing the stories, my family stories. So again, I'm not going to debate, you know, the issue of the Dahomey tribe, because we know that it's not a. There are aspects of it that are very heinous, and it's not to glorify it. It happened, just like chattel slavery happened. It's a part of history. You know, there are some colonizers, or shall I say pilgrims, that are excited with this because they could say, see, they were slave traders too. They sold their own people. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. As was the as was the tradition and the culture of the time. Again, when you conquered another tribe, you took on the prisoners as slaves, not unlike prisoners of war in any shape, form, or fashion. It's different now since they have the Geneva Convention, but let's don't be grand. And yes, they traded their people for weapons, alcohol, tobacco, whatever. But please tell me, was there anything like chattel slavery in Africa? And I'm not asking to be facetious. I want to know. Well, the slaves they took, or they were taken as slaves if they owed a debt. That was done in the Bible too. But were people born into slavery generation after generation after generation, like was done in the United States? Don't play. So again, I pity the fool, i.e., us, when we rely on Hollywood to accurately depict all aspects of history. If they don't depict accurately all aspects of the United States history as a whole, what makes you think they would accurately depict African history? For real? So, shout out to Viola Davis and a star-studded cast because they were amazing. Those women were absolutely amazing. And her performance was amazing. So, that's my commentary. Again, I'm glad that I'm reminded of the woman that I was. That yes, there were aspects of my life that I longed for that I missed. Years wasted. But no longer will I allow myself to shrink the accomplishments, the things that yielded me, that made me the woman that I am, to include the women who made me the woman that I am. To my sisters, as long as we are sisters, none of us have to die alone. Because again, all of us won't get married, whether we want to or not. And even if we are married, our husbands may leave us before. We're going to need each other. We're going to need each other. So if we cling to that, we won't die alone. There's still work to be done. Attitudes need to be changed, no doubt. Because we a handful, and that ain't always good. But this movie inspired me. It inspired me to continue to be excellent, or to strive for excellence, not perfection, but excellence. Excellence as a wife, excellence as a mother, excellence as a grandmother, excellence as a daughter, as a sister, as a friend. Excellent. Thank you for dropping by. Until next time, ciao for now.